Hello everyone, it's Helena Bird, and today we are going to look at some next level mark making together. Now don't be fooled, this is not, I wouldn't say, next level mark making. This is just what gave me the idea. I decided to swatch some tempera sticks that I got on Amazon very cheaply because they're designed for kids and thus they're often on sale, but they just make the most wonderful marks. I decided to do this over an old journal entry, and I really noticed that there was a huge difference when I layered the marks over a background. And I've been experimenting with this idea and taken it, I think, not as far as I can go, but quite a few steps further than I normally would. My last video was all about mark making, and I consider this like my next level mark making. So if you enjoyed the last video that I made all about mark making and just being free and enjoying the mark making process and doing something daily, then I would say you're probably going to enjoy this one too. I'm going to lapse into a voiceover in a moment where I start prepping the different layers of the piece of paper that I'm going to be working on. And the idea is to create collage material, but the first step really is just to enjoy the mark making process. So yes, I do hope that some of these pieces of paper will come out in such a way that I want to use them in future abstract collage, but that's sort of not the immediate point. The immediate point is just to enjoy putting marks down on the page, layer those up and see where that takes us. So let's get started. I hope you really enjoy this. Maybe you want to do your own crafting or at least some fussy cutting in the background, whatever. I hope you enjoy watching along and maybe even try this for yourself. So the first step that I'm taking in this process is to create a background. And there are many different ways that you can choose to do this. In my case, I've got my gel plate over to the left there, and I am just braying on some acrylic paint. But you could do this with marker pen, you could do it with watercolour, you could do it with pencil crayon, you could do it with regular crayon, although you might have difficulty getting other layers over the wax, so do be mindful of putting waxy layers down first. You could write all over the piece of paper, and that would be a background, just like I did with my journal entry in that example I showed you in the beginning. Anything that creates some kind of layer in the background is fair game. I'm not being very precise. I want things to look interesting rather than perfect. And you might notice that I'm using several different pieces of paper and just kind of randomly picking them. I use some square paper, some plain paper, and I also use some book pages. And I'm quite lucky with book pages in that I happen to be an author. And so I have book pages from translated copies of my books, my own books, that I can use because my foreign publishers keep sending me lots and lots of books in languages I can't read. So once I've donated some to the local library, in case there are people there looking for, some books in their language, I then think, well, what am I going to do with these books? So I tend to use them for crafts. So I'm going with my first layer here of actual mark making, and I'm using some India ink that's been sat in this bottle for, I think, several years, and it's time to start using this up. I'm just going through some fairly simple shapes. And remember, the idea of this is not to create something perfect, but to just get into the flow of making marks on the page. If you want to know a little bit more about why this might be beneficial, then please do revisit my last video that talks about 9 reasons why mark making is a good idea. But here I've just used the old ring from a washi tape to make some circles. I'm just picking up anything that is randomly on my desk. This is an old eyeshadow applicator, and just seeing what marks I can get out of the tools that are handy. I'm trying to make it as serendipitous as possible, i.e. I'm just reaching for whatever is handy and making some marks with it. I have not got a plan. I am not micromanaging this process. I am just putting some marks down with the media that I have to hand, and then putting some marks down with the tools I have to hand and just seeing what happens. The alphabet and numbers are a valid mark to make, so never overlook those when it comes to mark making. I do hope that you will get some ideas of other marks that you can make while you're watching me do this. because sometimes it is difficult to come up with new ideas for what kind of marks you could make, what kind of shapes you could put on the page. And I do deal with this in a free art course that is available via a link in the description box, and talk about how you can look for new shapes in your environment and essentially have a never-ending supply of shapes to make. It doesn't necessarily stop me gravitating to the same shapes, because I do love particular shapes and that's where I'm most relaxed. But it is good to know that when I want to push boundaries, I've got a solid library of shapes from my shape hunting. So that is something to check out in the description box if you'd like to go with this. I'd like to stress that I'm not even thinking through the colour palettes of this. I'm just sort of vaguely thinking what contrasting colour might work well. So the yellow and the pink, I know those work pretty well together, and I'm putting those together in a composition, but the composition is not thought through. I am just putting media wherever, and it's so funny me saying this because you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, Helen, honestly, we can see you have no plan. I get it. You can see I haven't got a plan. I know it's not perfect. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be creative. I think this ends up being one of my favourite pieces, actually. I'm very much in love with these pinks in yellows, these kind of neon colours, and the kind of effect they have when I use them in my art and in my collage work. I would say this was one of my most random pages. I end up creating these weird arcs over some lines. I do like how it turns out, but I think it ends up being one of the ones that I want to do more with. And this is why it's a part 1 video, because you can take this so far. And it's not so much that I want to show you how long it takes, because that makes it seem like we're counting down the minutes till we've got a finished piece of paper, and that's not the point of this. The point of this is to enjoy the process. It's more that I want to show you how far you can go. And even when I finish my part 2 video, there will still be places that you could have gone with this even further. You can layer the same piece of paper for a month and see what you've got at the end. I mean, that would be a fantastic experiment, and it's one that I might do in the future. Add a new layer of mark making to a piece of paper every single day for a month. How cool would that be as a quick art project that you could do every day? And these things don't occur to me until I start to push these boundaries with the mark making. So that's why it's such a valuable process. We've entered the portion of the video where I start to get what I call irreverent. So I'm getting irreverent about the kind of marks I'm making. I'm not worrying about what pattern is underneath and maybe how well a pattern will go over the top of it. I am just going in with bold patterns and seeing what happens. So I'm not paying any respect to the first marks I put down. I am just going over them with whatever pattern I feel like doing. So for example, putting pink squiggles over that black square pattern is kind of really disrespectful to that first pattern. It's going to start completely interrupting it. And that is exactly what I want to do. I want to interrupt the original patterns that I put down as much as possible. So I do think that irreverence is a very important part of this process, and it helps you build extraordinary papers that you would not ordinarily have built. You can hopefully see on the left hand side there that the paint is building up on my gel plate, and that ultimately I'm going to put a piece of wet strength tissue paper over that and pull it up and see what I've got. And in fact, I have to tell you right now that my pull was not wholly successful. There was a little bit of tearing, and I keep it in the video to show you that it's okay if you get tearing on your gel plate, and it is possible to still, inverted commas, fix that piece of paper if you want to. And there may also be parts of that piece of paper that are usable for you, even if you get tearing. And in fact, when you apply some more paint to your gel plate and pick up the piece that got left behind, you might find you get an even more interesting pattern than you would have done if you'd pulled up the whole gel plate in the first place. Sometimes you have to trust the serendipity of things, even if when I pulled up that gel plate, I was like, oh, I'm slightly disappointed by this. So going in with some gel pens, which I have to say are more difficult to see on the video, but in real life really pop, especially with the background of the text and the acrylic paints and the marks I've made with the pink. They really do create a very complex piece of paper. And I think complex as well as irreverent is a good word to have in your head when you're doing, inverted commas, next level mark making. You do want some complexity to your papers because you want them to be as unique as possible. Your papers are not going to look like the ones you can buy in shops for collage, and that's a good thing. It is something that you created yourself. It doesn't adhere to the trends of what's going on now. It's something unique that you can put into your own collages when you're working with abstract shapes and abstract colours, and as a result, your abstract collages will not look like anybody else's. I think that's something to celebrate. Here I come with my white Posca marker, and oh my goodness, I am so impatient. I couldn't wait for this pink paint to dry. And consequently, I didn't quite mess up my marker, but it did not love it. And also, can we just talk about the fact that Poscas leak a lot? I'm okay with it in a project like this because look, it just makes it more interesting. But I don't think I've ever found the perfect white acrylic marker pen. Poscas leak too much, creative Sharpie markers, they're not as vibrant as Poscas. You have to go over it several times. If you found the perfect white acrylic pen, please tell me in the comments, because I would really like to know about that. I think I'm going to put a poll on my community tab this week and ask people, come on, tell me the secret. You must have one that does not leak. Because you can be guaranteed you're doing something really serious and precise with a Posca marker and you press down and it leaks. And then you have to go into the zone of, well, nothing's perfect. But it's very annoying. So as you can see, I'm really going in with those fine details for that complexity, adding more lines and sort of dotted lines to this piece to make it as complex as possible. And again, this turned out to be one of my favourite pieces. This blue one, I would have to say, is my favourite piece in the end. I do love the colour blue anyway, so incredible bias coming your way. But I just think that I could use this for so many cool collages because I live by the sea and I'm often collaging stuff about the seaside and about the ocean. So, oh my goodness, I am so excited about using this piece of collage paper. I think I'm going to have to scan it because I don't want it to be cut up and never be able to use it again. Here's the point where I'm trying to get quite loose with my marks and not be precise. So I'm holding the pen in a very different position than I was earlier. And unless I'm drawing a straight line, if I'm drawing a curved line, I'm just holding the pen right near the top and allowing as much free movement as possible. Because this is the other reason that I'm doing mark making, is to make myself a little bit less of a control freak. I'm not sure if it's working yet, but that is my aim. And I was pretty pleased with how that turned out, but I do think there are definitely two sets of papers here. There are sets that I want to add to in a part 2 video, and there are sets that I'm just happy with as they are. And I will sort of divide those up at the end of the video. Okay, here's the tail. Look how good, it looks fine there. And then all of a sudden, oh dear. That's not really what I was going for. However, look at the interesting colours on that piece of tissue paper, and I am going to be able to salvage some of this and maybe even add some collage. On the left, those are the papers that I'm happy with as they are, and on the right, those are the papers where I want to do some more to them. I really hope this has been interesting and helpful and inspiring. There'll be more in the part 2 video very soon. Until then, take care and happy creating.